Hello. Hello. I am Ann Potter with Camps Rock, and welcome to our program today. I have a few comments, and then I'm going to introduce you to Matt Worthen, who is actually our guest presenter today, and he is going to be talking about creating with clarity and writing emails that parents will actually read. So actually open your emails and read your emails. And so that's our topic for today. But so that people have an opportunity to get settled, I wanted to just mention a few things. First of all, last week we celebrated our 10th anniversary with Camps Rock. I can't believe it's actually been 10 whole years, and it's been quite a journey, very interesting. And it's a hard business, but we're doing everything we can to continually make it better and better. And we made some huge changes this year, kind of behind the scenes, but I'll tell you more about that in a minute. So we started in Dayton, Ohio, but I would love to know where everybody is hailing from today. So if you want to pop in the chat where you are watching us from today, your name and where you are located. Um, and I wanted to also share an image of something that Matt will recognize. When Matt showed me his slide deck for this presentation, there was a slide he showed me, and you'll see it in a few minutes. And it reminded me of this particular image that we created when we first started Camps Rock. My niece, Rachel, actually drew this for me. I explained to her what I wanted, but this was the reason that we created Camps Rock in the first place. And that is because parents are out there trying to figure out where to take their children for summer camp. And there's just a ton of stuff going on in every mom and every parent, mom and dad and grandparents' lives that creates just massive chaos all the time. And trying to schedule summer camps just is difficult. And so that was the whole reason behind why we created Camps Rock in the first place. So like I said, I had my niece, Rachel, draw this little image to represent kind of what it was we were trying to, the problem we were trying to solve. So you will, in just a few moments, in Matt's presentation, you will see why I thought that particular image fit this situation quite well. I also want to tell you, and I'm going to check here in chat where we're coming from. Atlanta, Georgia. No one else is answering. Oh, there we are. New York City. Hello. And Bill in Dayton. He's upstairs. That's Bill, my husband. You know, Bill Potter. And so first I wanted to explain how we even kind of met Matt. And that was Bill was talking with someone Matt is also in Dayton, Ohio. And Bill was talking with a colleague, and they said, you really need to meet Matt Worthen. And so Bill went ahead and met with him, and he had a lot of great ideas about nonprofits. So one of the things that Matt is really passionate about is nonprofit organizations and helping nonprofits to leverage technology and leverage good communication skills and lots of other things that I'm sure he could tell you a lot more about. But anyway, so he is actually the one that helped us realize what a great opportunity we had to turn Camps Rock. We're not turning Camps Rock itself into a nonprofit, but we have started an arm of Camps Rock that is a foundation. So the government's moving a little slowly right now, and we are still waiting for our 501c3 to come through. But our ultimate goal is to be helping kids get to camp for free. So that's kind of what the Camps Rock Foundation will be doing. There's some other things that we're going to be doing, but so that has been a huge push for us this year, and we're just super excited to have Matt helping us with that journey for us to get started in the nonprofit world. But without further ado, let me introduce you, and hang on one second. I had myself very well organized, but then I lost a page here. Okay. To our presentation today, and Matt, never fear, in a moment I'm going to give you permission to share. But anyway, this whole presentation is about stop sending emails that get ignored and join us to learn how to craft messages that stand out in crowded inboxes and truly connect with your audience. Matt is our guest presenter, Matt Worthen. He brings over 20 years of experience in IT consulting, business operations, and nonprofit leadership. He's a passionate advocate for summer camps. He knows how to get parents to notice and engage and respond. And by the way, not just parents, because what we're talking about today, we sort of framed it up in terms of emailing parents, but you're emailing a lot of other people. You might be emailing candidates, people you're trying to hire. Maybe there are other sorts of colleagues that you're trying to email and get their engagement with your organization. So that's what Matt is going to be talking about today. He's a seasoned technology entrepreneur, a public speaker who speaks at all kinds of conferences and conventions, a strategist who has helped countless organizations boost their communication efforts and grow their impact. He is the co-founder of Dignified Services and the dignifiednetwork.com. And without further ado, I will present to you Matt Worthen. Matt,
Thanks, Anne. Oh
take it
my
away.
gosh, what an introduction. Thank you for the opportunity to serve you and the camp community today. Um, I would just first say, this workshop or the consolidated version of this workshop that you're going to experience today is the result of years of working with organizations and hearing a lot of the same challenges. And so we're going to unpack what those challenges are. And this presentation has evolved over the years. It is, the most current version, but nearly every time we run through this, new questions come in, new reflections after the fact that influence some small improvements or changes. So I want to hear from you today. I want to hear from anybody live, and if you're watching this recorded, feel free to follow up with me. It's such a rewarding conversation because it is so, I think, relatable to all of us that we have a lot of challenges related to communication, specifically digital communication in such a noisy environment. So, with that, I am going to attempt to share my screen here. Um, Thanks again. I want to give you a little bit of context and background. So I'm going to skip the introduction here, and thanks for doing that. Um, in this presentation, we're going to talk about three primary elements. The first is defining what we're going to arrive at here in a moment, which is the solution to this complex issue of engagement, specifically digital engagement, and how to draft communication that is easily received, easily actionable, something that on the recipient side, they understand it from the moment it lands in their inbox and they know what to do with the communication. And so, Anne, I'll probably pick on you a little bit during this presentation to engage with me on some of these activities. We're going to talk about naming conventions. And really, what I mean by that is, well, what the heck do we put in our subject lines? It's kind of a something we do so transactionally, something we do so often that maybe we don't slow down and really rethink the subject line. And now we're going to apply some of these concepts, the signaling principle to email. And so let's jump into, well, why I'm talking about this today. So, for those of you,
Was that an accurate, like, I realized that was the picture of this, only in mom terms, right?
exactly, yeah, in mom terms. So, in the context of those camps that are reaching out to families, the problem that exists, it's so universal. We see this in businesses, we see this in nonprofits, in government agencies, in service organizations, and in our personal lives. What I mean by that is, here's a representation of the problem we're talking about, but the problem we're talking about is actually invisible. What we're really speaking to is our digital life, but you can't see into someone else's digital life. So I had this image created because I wanted to show the physical representation of the problem we're discussing today. If you can imagine, for the families that you're communicating with or attempting to communicate with, if you could walk into their dining room or their home office and you saw physical paperwork piled up on that dining room table, spilling off onto the floor, pouring into the hallway, and you took a physical letter, one more piece of correspondence, and you threw it into that mess. And then the very next morning, you wondered, gosh, I wonder why they didn't respond to me. I wonder why they didn't do something with that letter. They didn't RSVP. They didn't sign up for my camp. They didn't respond to that posting for employment. If we could physically see the digital life of the recipient, we may slow down and question our approach. Is it really the right thing to um, hope for those results in such a chaotic digital world? And I wonder, is there anybody, and feel free to brag if you're on this call, and this includes you, is there anybody that does not feel overwhelmed with their digital life? Or if they specifically say, you know what, this isn't a problem for me. I have a system in place. My inbox is at zero every night. I know how to sort my community. I can find every file I've ever made. Um, Maybe
Right.
not to that extent, right? But um, it's few and far between that this isn't really a universal problem. It's very few and far between that have such a structure and system in place. And the other part of this root cause is we don't have any gatekeepers anymore, especially in the professional world. The physical mail always got sorted, and even at home, we would kind of put it in piles maybe by who it's being received and who it's addressed to. But in the digital world, it is so difficult. We have direct access, we have instant access, and things pile up so fast. It's very difficult to stay in on top of all of these things and to understand what your action or your responsibility as the recipient is. So that's a little bit about the root issue, but there's some motivation to fix the problem. And this might be obvious, this might be inherent within the conversation, but the motivation for me and the things that I've kind of collected along the way to make this presentation, and by the way, the much larger workshop, which we can speak to along the way, the motivation for me and my why did I want to solve this problem for me and the nonprofits that I serve and the businesses that I've started? Well, it really comes back to my sales coach. His name was Don, and Don was a international chief executive officer for very large companies, served in marketing and sales roles, business development roles, consulted with Microsoft and HBO, and uh, was a big influence in my early sales career. And one of the things I'll never forget, again, this is kind of my motivation here. He said, the easier you are to do business with, the more business you'll do. That is a simple thing to say, but it's not a very easy thing to act on. And in the context of this conversation, we are just talking about how can we be easier to communicate with? How can we be the easiest to reply to? In other words, the other sort of root issue is that we leave a lot for the recipient of communication to interpret, to prioritize on their own. And there maybe isn't a perfect solution, and we certainly can't apply these principles to every single communication that we have, but we can slow down and ask ourselves, how easy am I to do business with in this transaction, in this communication? Is this particular email that I'm sending worth slowing down for? And if we're posting a job, we're promoting a camp, and that's our core line of business. We're making a special announcement, or we're trying to attract new funders or grants. Those are probably worth slowing down for. Those are high stakes moments in our organization. And it deserves, I think, a little bit of scrutiny and self-reflection to say, can I make this better? Can I put myself on the other side of this transaction? And how much can I own? I think that's really what we're after today. What are all of the pieces that you, the recipient or the sender, that you, the sender, the creator of a communication can own? And when we're talking about in the context of promoting a camp, our audience is pretty darn busy. And they probably get a lot of different kinds of communication into the same inbox. Our personal email, which I would imagine most camps you're contacting a parent, family, their personal account, has all sorts of different types of inputs from shopping and travel and our personal schedules, family events. Oh my gosh, they all stack up in there along with notifications from Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever other platforms we might be on, piles into a mailbox. And some of us are more structured in the way that we have those systems in place, and others kind of all go into one system. So, what I would ask of the person creating, of all of you on this call, is what can we do to be really, really kind to the person we're communicating with? We should assume they are buried in those digital communications, that their dining room or home office looks like the photo like this, that they aren't caught up and just waiting for that next thing to action. So how do we stand out? Well, the good,
Matt, I'm
oh
going to
yeah.
interject on this motivation part. The I listened to a podcast once. I don't even remember who it was, but they were talking about how as business owners, we're excited. And I know all of you who are preparing your summer camp season and you know what you're going to be doing and all of the fun, great things that you're going to be doing with the kids. You're excited about what you have to offer. And the moms and dads out there, the people who are your recipients, the parents who are wanting to book their kids into fun summer camps, they do want to hear from you. They really do. They might not know it yet, especially if they've never encountered your organization before. They've never been to your place before, but they do want to know what it is that you are sharing. And so that's to me the motivation is like you need to be shouting from the rooftops how awesome your business is and how awesome the stuff you're planning for the summer is. And so the motivation to get the subject line right, to get the written words in your email right, so that you can get to those parents who really do want to hear about you. That to me is the motivation.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's see what we can accomplish today to move the needle a little bit on that. And the good news is the solution is grounded in research. The solution actually predates email. The solution is in the way our brains receive, process, and remember information, and the speed in which we're able to do that. So if we boil that research down, it actually says that using visual cues, such as bolding text, italics, underlining, color highlights used correctly, helps readers identify, focus on, and remember key information. These cues act as signals that guide attention and support deeper cognitive processing. In other words, why would we send an email if it's not going to be mentally processed by the person we're trying to reach? So, how do we unpack these signals? What does that really practically mean in our work? And how do we apply this to email specifically? Well, whether you're writing emails or creating calendar events, that's another big one, or maybe you're making documents to share, you'll learn how to guide your recipient's attention and reduce that cognitive overload. We're trying to highlight what truly matters. And so these strategies are practical, they are instantly applicable. Um, and so let's have a little fun. Let's dig into this together to see if we can.
We used these today when we were putting together the emails to go out to remind people about this session. We were like, Bill's like, oh, we should highlight this and we should highlight. Yeah.
Good.
So you're right.
Excellent.
It's like immediately usable.
And so, for the sake of time, we probably won't go through every example I have in this deck, but I would ask you just on this particular slide. Now, this might not be directly relevant necessarily, but let's think about in the context of reaching out for an urgent quote or a service. And maybe for a camp, you're not reaching out for a quote necessarily, but maybe you're reaching out for additional information. A parent or a family is trying to make a decision. Are we going to choose this experience for our loved one, for our family? They're most likely under a tight deadline to make that decision. We don't oftentimes plan months or years in advance for these things. So is there anything maybe in this particular example? We have Tom C. Customer is our best client ever. Maybe he's a returning family to our camp. And he's sending this email to you as a primary point of contact within your camp. Couple questions I would ask, and in our longer form workshop, we actually work out some workflows, kind of in a Lean Six Sigma way, to know what to do with information as it comes into our business. One of the most difficult things to address is if you say, well, yeah, I would know what to do with that, but does everybody on your team? If you have a member of your camp that's talking about your camp out in the community and somebody says, I would like to know more information about that experience, that camp, does everybody know how to guide a potential buyer, a potential customer, what to do with the information? So that's kind of a root question. What do we do as ourselves specifically, but also imagining those that we work with or support your organization? Maybe they're on your board. Are we being intentional in telling others what to specifically do with the information? So this is a little bit of an open-ended exercise on this particular slide, but I would say, Anne, you've been practicing signaling and organizational signals with email. Does anything stand out to you in this particular example?
Well, urgent can mean a lot of different things to a lot of people. So probably giving a date. The other thing, I had said this to you, we have gotten into the habit of putting Camps Rock at the beginning of our subject line so that recipients see right away where this is coming from. Because we're a business, I guess. Yeah, are you talking about the subject line or the text
Both,
as
and those are great observations. And the subject line urgent request. Well, that's putting a lot on the recipient. A, you don't know what urgent means. They're not telling you what their deadline is. And they're also not telling you how to respond or support them in this request. They're just kind of throwing this hot potato in your direction and hoping the recipient knows how to get this information together, who on the team should be included, and to best respond and support this person. So it gets a little tricky when we receive emails that are so open-ended. And I'm going to skip again just a couple of these and jump to, I think, a little bit more of the practiced approach to how to actually make communication better. So when we think about, are we easy to do business with? Are we sending a communication that's going to be well received? Yes, we're going to start with a subject line. We're going to go through an exercise in a moment to break that down. We're going to also, of course, focus on the body of the email. And one of the pieces when we get to content, oh my gosh, this is rigorous and this is important to think about. It is much harder, is much more intellectually challenging to be concise than it is to write in long form. So I'm going to kind of spoiler alert, tell you that it is much easier to receive a shorter email than a longer email because the more information, the more you're asking of the recipient. So part of being easy to do business with is being concise with important communication. So consolidating content, applying the signaling principle, we haven't gotten there yet, and understanding the subject line and how to best show up in that little tiny bit of space that we're afforded. If we can do these three things or slow down in these three categories, communication will improve. So let's start with the subject line. This is sort of a fun activity. I think it's a communication between superheroes. And so we're not going to read the body of the message right now. All we're going to do is focus in on the subject line itself. The subject of this email is evening mission. So I would ask, is that an easy email to receive? Is it considerate of the recipient? Anne's shaking her head
I'm
no.
going to jump in and say no.
Why not? Why isn't that easy to receive?
Well, I have no idea what. Yeah, she says too vague.
Too
No
vague.
idea what that means, and yeah, I'm not sure what I'm getting myself into here.
Well, you're right. The email subject doesn't do several important things. It doesn't convey urgency. In other words, it's mentioning something that's happening today, but we're not actually saying that it's important that you pay attention to this. It's not very specific and it doesn't note any action item. It's not telling the recipient they have something to do. And we are assuming a lot of institutional knowledge. So it's not a very helpful thing to receive via email. We're kind of offloading from ourselves the cognitive load. We're passing it on to the recipient and saying, "Figure this out. I hope you do because it's actually pretty important.
We're saying read this.
Read this." But without actually saying it, all of those things are implied. So let's look at a different version, same email, but a different subject line. Evening mission tonight, pipe. Now, this is a character we'll talk about more. Action item dash, please confirm. How do we feel about that kind of email if we were to receive it as a recipient compared to the first email?
Yeah,
Better.
much,
I see your head shaking this way this time instead of this way. That's
but
probably a good thing. What stands out to you?
well, I know that it's tonight, so I'm gonna need, if I'm gonna respond, I need to respond today now, so and then it tells me that I'm gonna have to confirm, and yeah.
And you've got an action item. You've got something to do here. Now, it gets a yellow check mark, not a green one. Why? Well, it does convey urgency and it notes an action item, but it still potentially assumes institutional knowledge. And you already shared a tip that sounds like it's made an impact in your communication that you put Camps Rock in the subject line of your email. Now, that is removing some of those barriers. The recipient doesn't have to have the institutional knowledge that your email address, your sender, your display name is connected to something they might be interested in.
Right. I do that because I'm on so many email lists myself, business wise. I'm on so many email lists, and so many people assume that the recipient knows who they are. And I'm like, I have no idea who you are sending me this. So that's why I put Camps Rock in front. I figure if they don't know who Camps Rock is by now, they'll probably unsubscribe anyway.
Well, certainly. So that would be an additional improvement to this example. If we included our organization name in the subject line, that might also encourage the recipient to open the email. Again, we're trying to be the easiest we can to receive our communication. And if we're not an organization that we hear from a lot, if the sender isn't out there all the time talking to us daily, weekly, monthly, maybe it's just once a year, maybe it's a follow-up, maybe it's the first time you've ever engaged with them. It's an easy email to skip or to delete or to save for later, and maybe you miss a deadline if we aren't putting the most important information up front. So we're going to get even better at this. Let's move on to questioning this email itself. This is an email here between superheroes related to an important event happening within Gotham. So this is really, two paragraphs of important information, oops, kind of in the center, and and an opening paragraph and a closing paragraph and statement. So we really have kind of the vast majority of the information in between. I'm going to read this email to you, and it's relatively short, but we'll see what stands out. So I hope this email finds you well. I've been scanning the city's criminal activity, and it looks like we've got some trouble brewing tonight that might require both our talents. Are you up for an evening mission? I received some intel that the notorious Green Goblin has resurfaced in Gotham and he's causing chaos in the East End. You know how unpredictable and dangerous he can be, so having an extra set of eyes and webs on the situation could be a game changer. I suggest we rendezvous on the rooftop near the old chemical plant at 9 p.m. It's a good vantage point to monitor the area and plan our approach. Please arrive in your full gear and let's coordinate our efforts to take down the Goblin and his gang. As always, let's keep our communications secure and remember the importance of maintaining our secret identities. If you have any other suggestions or concerns, please feel free to let me know. I look forward to another successful team up, Spidey. Stay safe until then. Some really important information in this email.
Who is
Earlier,
it
just a
from? Who are you, Matt?
few.
I'm trying to figure out who that is. But yeah.
So we've got a little bit of kind of burden here. We talked about organizational signals early on, and I know, Anne, you've been practicing them. Do you see an opportunity for those in this email?
Yeah, there's a lot to read in order to gather the information, but I think that highlighting or bolding certain things would be very helpful here. And
Absolutely.
and maybe even to pull out in some bullet points or some like the time and the location and the fact that you're supposed to dress in your full gear, not to be buried in a paragraph, but in more of a bolded kind of way.
Yeah, we're not really doing the recipient, in this case, Spider-Man, any favors. We're putting a lot of information out there, and um, we're we're relatively brief in this. Again, it's kind of only two paragraphs, opening, close, but we're not identifying action items or key information. One of the things that is a little bit of a trigger for me at work and in my client environments, if I hear this, I try and slow the team down. How often do we hear others say, "Well, I sent the email. I didn't you get it? I sent the email." And that can be kind of a form of digital torment on one another. uh, because it's almost like the sender is acting like they can just wash their hands of the transaction. I sent the pertinent information. Didn't you get it? Didn't you commit it to memory? Didn't you act on it? Um, and let's be a little bit kinder than that. Let's be a little bit nicer than that in our communication and what our expectations are of all of the busy people we're trying to communicate with. So exactly, and we've got some room for improvement. One of the questions, if you slow down and say, am I being easy to do business with? Is this communication clear? Is it easy to receive? Well, if you only used one feature in our signaling approach, we're going to use bold in this case. So we didn't use the other features that we could use, like bulleting or color. We just used bold. And the question is, if you only read the bold information, would you get enough information to remember it, to be useful, to act on it? And in this case, we've only bolded three small sections of text. The Green Goblin is resurfaced in Gotham. I suggest we rendezvous on the rooftop near the old chemical plant at 9. Please arrive in your full gear. If that's all you got, there's I'm not saying we delete the rest of the content. We do want to be concise. We want to be brief as possible. And then we want to take that final step and say, let's apply some signaling features and draw the eye, draw the attention to the most relevant information. It is something we naturally do. Our brains are very good at scanning text, automatically looking for these text features and committing them as the most important information. So it's a little bit of a litmus test. How are we doing in our approach? Again, just read the bolded information. So in this particular example, we have highlighted some very useful information. And if you're new to marketing, if you're new to communications, you could write these bullet points down on the right side of the screen and stick them onto the bottom of your computer monitor. This is really what we're looking for in critical communication. Are we using text features for key issues, location, time, and our specific ask? So those are the four categories that we're scanning our email for and highlighting. Now you could argue I missed some. That's true. You know, the importance of maintaining our secret identities, that might be left for implication. We might be implying that since I didn't highlight it. But again, this is kind of a brain exercise. We want to slow down. We want to read communication. Um, Before I move on, I'll give you a tip. And this is something that I think is really helpful that we collect communication over time in our inbox and we sort communication that we like and we save it in a computer folder, in an email folder, and we create a folder for communication we don't like or that doesn't make sense. Specifically, if you're in a marketing role, you're in an outreach role, a fundraising role, a hiring manager type position, it's helpful to reflect on those emails that we've collected over time for the things we like and the things we don't like. I hear this from individuals that say, I receive emails that I know exactly what they were. They were a marketing email. I know exactly what the service was or product was. I didn't buy it, but it was very clear. I was the wrong customer, but it was a good communication. Save those types of emails. One of the reasons, and this is kind of an FAQ that's much newer, is, well, can't AI do some of this for me? Can I use, and the answer is absolutely. AI can do some of this work for you. But AI needs to be fed good information and trained on your specific requirements, your expectations, your voice. And so it needs, like we just call it AI food. We need to feed the AI. We need to feed the robots good information. And we can also tell it, don't do this. Don't write emails like these. So if we capture and organize and sort that along the way, when we go to implement an AI tool, we're speeding up the process.
Very much. Yeah. We've we use AI, um, but we write everything ourselves, and then we have certain voices. You mentioned voice, like say, write this in a upbeat, casual way or something like that. Um, and then, I mean, I go through and pick and choose. There are certain things that I leave it the way I had originally wrote it. And other times when I see some words that I like the words that they chose, that the AI chose better than the words I had originally. But it's always predicated on an original message that is our message, what we wanted to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. And so, um, not to go down the AI tangential kind of rabbit hole, because we certainly could. That might be its own webinar sometime.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
Thinking about considerate content, we're going to revisit this just to reinforce it using text features, key issue, location, time, specific ask. But there are some other enhancements we can apply to this concept. One is to consider the reading level of the recipient. Two is to attach a video to the email. And I would encourage you, if you're going to go through that trouble of making a video, put that in the subject line, video attached. It increases open rate, and it increases engagement specifically for marketing and outreach. Videos also allow for us to reach an audience type that we might otherwise miss with written text. And so these kind of variables or ideas go together. I had an organization I was working with. They focused, they specialized in hiring re-entry employees, something that maybe your camps aren't necessarily engaging in. Um, some of them may be, but looking at, well, who's our audience? And for this particular client that was hiring re-entry employees, the trouble was that the CEO, and you're muted.
Explain what you mean, because I didn't know what that was until you explained it the other day.
Reentry is individuals that are reentering society. They've been incarcerated, they've been released, and for many of them, this is their first professional job in a long time with a direct employer. Um, it may, in this client environment, it was probably the most professional job they've had from an office setting for many of them, depending on their background. And so there was an inherent problem with internal communication. In other words, their audience wasn't used to, the recipients weren't used to being uh, communicated with in the way that they were being communicated with. So there was this mismatch. And so we sat down and looked through these internal communications. The CEO was so upset. She's like, why is no one reading my email? And I said, well, maybe we just add another layer of communication. Maybe you just record yourself in whatever setting you're in and attach a quick video, no more than 30 seconds, max 1 minute, and just say out loud the most important information you want to convey. That was transformational within their organization. And I have seen video transform external communication, marketing, highlighting with imagery or something to share. It really adds a whole nother layer of our digital communication to attach that kind of engagement. And I feel like we got over it during COVID in the sense that our hair can be a little bit of a mess, the background can be a little bit unusual, the dog can be barking. That's okay. You don't have to make some high quality production to make it count and make it work. It's actually kind of endearing for it to be not as polished, and still collecting data on those points. But looking at attaching data can be or attaching video can be very, very helpful. So, um, just watching the clock here, I want to talk about one of the principles that is a little bit more complex than what we've talked about. but it's actually enhancing our subject line to the best of our ability. And one of the ways to do that as a reminder to you is to create your own bank of variables that you want to have in every email subject. In other words, we sort of have this bank here, and they're in brackets to remind us that these are variables. Action required, feedback needed. Maybe we're going to fill in an event name or specific project name, put the words internal, external compliance on there. And here's how we build an email subject using kind of these own mental reminders. This particular example, Anne, has 4 variables along the way: follow up, action item, review, and notes attached. So if we can imagine that in our own setting, our own application for the communications we send, we might be inviting someone to, you know, understand a camp, to read a marketing message, to get involved. We should tell them that they have an action. And if you have something attached, maybe it's a PDF, maybe it's a video, maybe it's both, let them know that there's that attachment. We can scan an email subject like this, separated with pipes, very quickly in one dash at the end. And again, we kind of want to slow down and say, if I received that, would I know what was going on? In your case, Anne, you had mentioned putting the organization name as kind of our maybe our first variable. So that would be in your subject bank to make sure if you write an email real quick, you just want to kind of reference that and say, am I including the pieces that I hope to have? Because they're easy to forget. As easy as they are to remember, they're easier to forget. And so if we're on the fly, we're creating an email, it's nice to have a little bit of a reference guide. So this is sort of your reference guide for your subject line, where this is your reference guide for the body of the email.
Mhm.
Any feedback or questions on that approach? I know it might seem a little unusual or different to think about. You're really writing, in this case, 4 mini subject lines. They're like
Mhm.
micro subjects separated by this pipe or a dash.
Yeah, well, and I would love to know if anybody online on the Zoom has any questions or is wondering about anything that we've been talking about. And feel free to either type that in the chat or unmute yourself and ask. Um, Matt, one of the things that I keeps coming up in my mind is sort of consistency in that if you're sending out emails to whether it's you're sending them out to parents or you're sending them out to candidates or something, that especially if you're sending them out on a regular basis, that there's some consistency to what you send in terms of both like your style and your voice, and even things like, the personal level of whatever you talk about or whatever. I feel like when people as you get to know someone, like that's the way I feel about our newsletter and the things that we send out, is that I want it to be personal. I want people to begin to learn who Bill and I are and why we are doing what we're doing, and that kind of thing. And that I think the more you're consistent, the more you can either make your message a little bit longer, because as people get to know you, it's like, oh yeah, this is one I want to open because there's always good information here, or there's always an interesting, or I'm curious to know about this thing or whatever. Um, I just feel like that, like if you're trying to build up, for example, your open rate, how what percentage of people who receive your email actually open your email. I think that consistency to the message and the style of your message really helps for that to happen, for more people to open. Not,
Absolutely. And
not
Ann,
just the subject line.
you
They
just
begin to
reminded me of a
realize, yep, this is somebody I want to read.
absolutely. And those data points are so valuable. Open rate can be sometimes slightly misleading. If those of you might be using Constant Contact or HubSpot or a similar product, um, open rate doesn't always equate to a human opening the email. So we're seeing sometimes email filters and things launching the email to scan for links and things like that. It actually like misreports that data point. And that brings me to video attached is actually another layer of data. So if you have a video attached and you're hosting it, let's say in Vimeo, or there's sales platforms, outreach platforms that track those video metrics, you can see how long they watch the video. They'll heat map it for you to see the most important elements of the video. So there's kind of this whole nother layer that we can get into related to the data we collect. And so anyway, not to go too far down that rabbit hole, but you're absolutely right. We want to have good open rates. We want to have good, clean data. And people do want to get to know you. There's certainly a place for newsletters and longer form communication. That's wonderful. You might have avid kind of engagement, avid readers that know and love your brand and want more content. Um, and that's great. I think even if we write in longer form or we have those opportunities to share more about our organization, we kind of have the TLDR moment, the summary
Yeah.
at the top, just in case we're catching somebody that doesn't have the time to do it now, but they might want to save it for later. And they wouldn't know that unless we had the consolidated summary at the top. So
Yep.
just a couple quick things here before we conclude. I want to watch the time. If you don't leave with any other information than this particular slide, which I know looks insane, so let me explain what's going on here. Um, Still waiting for Disney to reach out to me on this one. Obi-Wan Do No Buy. This is a made-up Jedi name. The reason for this is if you took these three components, do, know, and buy, those three elements to make up your email subject line, you have a pretty strong subject. What does the recipient need to do? What do they need to know? When do they need to do it by? So as concise as we can be, and indicating those three elements. And now we've got these stormtroopers saying, did we hit them? Well, I don't know. Did the email land? Did we have these elements? Is it a good thing to hit send on, or should we slow down? Before we wrap up, and just in the last few minutes, anticipating some frequently asked questions. Again, what are organizational signals? Those are the things we've been talking about. Visual cues, bold text, bullet points, headings, spacing that help guide the reader's attention to the most important information. When should you use these organizational signals? Well, when we have a main idea or important detail we want to highlight, when we want to take complex information and make it more understandable, and we want to create a structure. So again, reminding you, key issue, location, time, and specific ask is our short list of things to look for that we can use organizational system signals for. Can you use too many signals? Well, yes. Overusing, like bolding every sentence or changing paragraph color in an alternating way, can overwhelm. And it's the exact opposite effect we're looking for. So we want to use this sparingly. If everything is emphasized, then nothing stands out. So again, we want to make communication easy to scan. We want to break up long blocks of text and emphasize those most important words. So we can't overdo it. Well, with that, I know we only have a few minutes left, but Ann, I would love to hear from you or anybody else on the call related to problems that you're encountering with digital communication or ways that you want to apply some of these concepts, or maybe you've already mastered this and you can share how well it's working for you.
Thank you so much, Matt. And actually, like I said, so you went through this presentation kind of with Bill and I 2 weeks ago, I think it was, or a week and a half ago. And we have incorporated even more of what, I mean, we were already doing some of these things, but we've incorporated even more of what you talked about. And honestly, it was a great reminder about this whole subject line issue. So just like getting people, like putting enough information in that subject line to even just get the email opened. It's just very helpful. So thank you so much.
Well, and for you and all of the camps and community that you're serving, I would love an opportunity to continue this conversation. So, if you are struggling with communication or you're building a team and it would be useful to do this collaboratively or a partner camp, would love to bring everybody together and do the longer form workshop. There's actually an industry credential aligned with this, and there's worksheets and it's a much larger kind of endeavor if we want to go down that road, or we can always stay light and keep it consolidated and to the point. But happy to reach out to any of you if you have any questions or concerns. My information's up on the screen, matt@thedignifiednetwork.com.
Right. And I'll include all of that with the follow-up email. Like I said, everybody who has registered will receive the follow-up email and all the information to reach out to Matt if you would like to find out more information about the other things that he does and offers and the longer form of this presentation. And actually, I really feel like we will be bringing Matt back in the fall because I know there are a couple of topics that I feel like it's not really the right time of year right now to be talking about them because everybody's, madly getting ready for children to arrive and hiring people and everything. But when we get to the fall, I think the topic of requests for proposals and that whole, for those who are possibly wanting to follow through on things like requests for proposals and that kind of thing, I think would be a great topic, or a longer version of this particular topic in the fall when we all have a little more breathing room, right?
And I'd be glad to come back anytime. Thanks for
All
having me
right.
today.
All right. Well, everybody, I know everyone is extremely busy, but just wishing you all well and hope that your registration season is going great, that your hiring season is going great, and that your summer will be just absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to spend an hour with us, and we will talk with you again soon. All right. Bye, Matt. Thank you so much.
Bye bye.
All right. Bye-bye.